Hi, and welcome to Across the Desk. This week, Oklahoma's Secretary of Education Ryan Walters is a theocrat and an authoritarian, and he's also a freedom-hating piece of crap. So, we have an education secretary here in Oklahoma who was handpicked by the governor, by the way, to lead the Secretary of Education. Now, there's a few interesting things about Mr. Walters, and it's mostly the corruption. Because here he is, a guy that's working for, being placed in, the Secretary of Education seat, while he's also the director of a dark money super PAC called Every Kid Counts. What does Every Kid Counts do? Well, they're a think tank that mostly supports privatizing education, Christian education, and charter schools. Killing public education is the plan of this dark money group. And the coolest thing about this dark money group is they don't have to disclose who their donors are. And they don't. Of course, there is a billionaire in there. And what does he do? Well, he mostly funds Mr. Ryan Walters' salary. Yeah, that's what he does. Pays him $120,000 a year to run this dark money group, while he's also the education secretary of the state of Oklahoma. Sound like a conflict of interest? It does. Does it sound corrupt? Absolutely. But you see, Ryan Walters doesn't like you to think about his corruption. So what does he do? He goes out in his car, like every other sheep you ever saw, shakes a video around while he takes it, and does a video in his car about all the wokeness. Oh, everything's so woke. Now, what would happen to be woke? Well, anything that Mr. Ryan Walters disagrees with. Zucchini boats? You like zucchini boats? Ryan Walters doesn't. So guess what zucchini boats are? They're wokeness. I'm sure they are. They're wokeness to him. There's some plant-based hippie liberal diet wokeness. Gotta get rid of them zucchini boats, man. Nobody plants zucchini anymore. We need a law. You make sure people don't do that. And from now on, you're eating cheeseburgers twice a day, bacon for breakfast and bacon for dinner. We're all going to have high cholesterol and everything else, and if you can't do it because of GERDs, too bad. We're an ag state here. We support the beef industry, and if you don't, you're not an Oklahoman. You're just woke. And that's Mr. Ryan Walters for you, because he's in a deflection game. See, he's got caught with his hand in the cookie jar and letting other people get their hands in the cookie jar. So now he's got to go on and deflect everybody with shiny keys. No, look at the wokeness over here. Look at the wokeness. Because when it comes to the corruption of Ryan Walters and his office, well, there's a bunch of it. For starters, we got millions of dollars. About $10 to $12 million that was misappropriated. Totally misappropriated through a class wallet scheme. Well, where did this money come from? Well, I'll tell you. It was federal money designed to mitigate COVID for public schools. It was mostly spent so it could support teachers and support staff and everything else a public school would need to stay open during COVID. Is that what Ryan Walters used the money for? Well, absolutely not. What he did was he said, hey, I can take this money and I can use it as my privatization scheme. And this will be my model. And if it works out, I can use it like, hey, look at what happened with this. It worked out great. We need to do private stuff. So what did he do? He took this money destined for private schools to keep them open and gave it to private school parents. Yeah. And it went about as well as you thought it would, because they bought no school supplies with it. They bought TVs instead, game consoles, whole game systems, barbecuers, and dishware. That's exactly what they bought it with. Well, these are misappropriated funds. And so now, in another scheme of this class wallet, the federal government was $650,000 back. What a fiasco. What an ineptitude. Talk about unqualified to do your job, because Secretary Ryan Walters, the education secretary, was fully in charge of this. He was fully responsible. He was the leader. But what did he do? He tried to blame it on Class Wallet, and then had Stitt and Attorney General go after Class Wallet. We're going to make sure we get every bit of that taxpayer money come back to us. Yes, we are. Well, Class Wallet said, We didn't approve these. As a matter of fact, we sent everything to Secretary Ryan Walters to sign off on everything. And when we asked him, hey man, are you sure these are approved vendors? He went ahead and blanket signed off on them. Ryan Walters, his signature is on those things to allow these purchases to take place. He allowed it. He's the one who did it. He's trying to shift the blame. That didn't really work that well, so now everything's woke. Hey, these porn in schools and gays, it's all wokeness. We gotta get rid of it. Gotta get rid of it. But that's not the end of it, is it? Because here you go, there's a few other things. One, he got in a big fiasco with Joy Hoffmeister because he went to war with him. See, she's running for governor against his boss, he's a yes man to Kevin Stitt. That's who Ryan Walters is, a yes man to Kevin Stitt. So he's slamming Joy Hoffmeister, who is not the superintendent, but she is the education superintendent, which is an elected position, by the way. And she was in this position, right? So he's slamming her right and left, calling her liberal wokeness when she just changed her political affiliation to Democrat. See, she was a Republican until about 4 months ago when she decided to run for governor. Interesting deal. So now she's a Democrat. Well, not really, because she comes out on the news and says, hey, you know what? I'm still a Republican. I'm just registered this way. So she's really not a Democrat. But since she's running against Ryan's boss, the guy who put him in his position, he's got to try to slam her. So he comes up with this hokey thing about Tulsa school systems having porn in their libraries. There's porn in there. So he pulls out this thing from about a year or two ago where a board member said, hey man, we got these books we need to look at. And they did, and they removed them 2 years ago. Well, Ryan Walters put out a post just this week talking about all the wokeness, and they got all this porn in there, and everybody's pointing out this stuff has been removed already. But see, that's not the point. See, Ryan Walters knows that if he can spread enough disinformation, more than the people spreading real information can, well, he's going to pick up some voters, you see, that don't read the real information. He can disinformation a lot of people and rile them up, get them a bunch of anxious going on, have them send campaign money and go vote. And he knows that's going to work. That's what he's going to do. He thinks he can out-media them, man. See, if I can reach more people than these people trying to give the truth out there, well, then I can manipulate a lot of my voters to get out to the polls. And that's exactly his plan. See, he's going to out-media them. I got a billionaire behind me. I got another billionaire in the governor's mansion. We're going to flood the media so much that they won't be able to just do anything else. And with the conservative media here in Oklahoma who won't play liberal or Democrat ads, well, you know, you get that. That's what's going to happen. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So you had these so he got in this big fight with Joy about a week or two ago on Greer funds. Greer funding. This is pre-K education funding for little kids starting school and stuff. We wanted to withhold it. You see why? Why he wanted it? Well, because Tulsa has all this porn. You see, because he's really at a fight with the leader of the Tulsa public school system there, in their administration, in their superintendent. He's really going after her. He's been going after her for a couple of years. Him and Stitt both have. And they're really hitting her now. So that's what this is about. And if he can slam her and then pick Joy up in the bid, he's going to do it. And so he got this fight with these Greer funds, which made him look bad. Hey, why are you withholding these funds? Well, because of Tulsa. I don't want these kids to be woke. This woke ideology, we got to stop it. So, but the weird deal is, none of these Greer funds were destined for Tulsa public schools. So when he got caught with his pants down, he had to let it go through. So Monday, the funding went through for the Greer. That's a win for Joy Hoffmeister. Well, you know, that it doesn't set well with Ryan Walters. So he has to go out and say, there's porn in the Tulsa public schools. Look what Joy's doing. And that's what he does. Because he's a deflection, you see, from the misappropriation of money. Because when it comes to bridge the gap, the federal government wants $650,000 of that back. Because of the misappropriated money. Because of the incompetence of Ryan Walters and the office he holds. And that's not it. That's not it. See, the government also wants another $250,000 back that was misappropriated because it wasn't classified right. They had $250,000 that was spent that was classified as entertainment, as safety equipment or cleaning supplies. And what were these things that was bought for $250,000 that were misappropriated? Guns and ammo. Yeah, for the school system. Guns and ammo, $250,000 worth. Of course, we're not going to know where that gun and those ammos went, are we? Because see, the cronies and the buddies of Secretary Ryan Walters, they ended up with those. And they're not going to have to give them back, of course, because it's the taxpayer who's going to end up paying this money to go back to the federal government. Nearly $1 million has to go back. That was misappropriated, you see, because here's Ryan Walters wanting to play his little privatize the Oklahoma school system experiment that utterly failed. It failed hard. So he has got to deflect from all that by coming out with the wokeness, which is something else. It's something totally sick that he comes out and does this, because he kind of cheapens it, really, by doing it. Everything's woke, and after a while, I see in his videos, you're like, okay, yeah, man, I get it, it's woke, right? Yeah, man, that Old Spice, man, it smells like old man, can't stand it. Wokeness, if you use it. I get it, Ryan. It's all woke. It's all woke. You're just such a coward. Oh my God. And so that's what he goes around doing, pining in a video, angsting out people to send him votes and campaign cash. And that's exactly what Ryan Walters likes to do. And the other thing that really gets me about Ryan Walters that you got to understand is he really isn't for freedom. He's an authoritarian. He likes autocracy, and he is a complete theocrat. He totally believes in Christian nationalism. All this wokeness by teaching racism in schools, you see. All this wokeness by teaching Judaism in schools and Islam, prayer. That's wokeness, because he doesn't agree with it. See, we're a Christian nation, and you have to be a Christian, just like you got to eat hamburgers twice a day. You have to pray to Jesus Christ 18 times a day. I don't care if you're not a Christian. You're going to be one, or you're not going to live here. And that's how he sees it, you see. See, because when it comes to things like the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, Ryan Walters hates that. Because when it comes to the First Amendment, let's suppose you are woke. There's a real thing, woke. I'm woke, which I don't know if that means I'm more enlightened. Hey, I believe in science, K-type star, G-type star. You're just woke. That's wokeness, you see. But even though it may be wokeness, don't I have a First Amendment right to that? Well, see, Education Secretary Ryan Walters doesn't think so. He wants to read it all out, see? Because that wokeness doesn't abide by him. It's something it's obviously something he disagrees with. That's why it's woke, you see. And if it disagrees with it, you shouldn't have a right to be able to speak about it. Shouldn't be a right to protest about it. You shouldn't have a right to assemble with other people, like-minded people about it. Total violation of First Amendment rights. But that's how Secretary of Education Ryan Walters thinks. You see, if you are woke, if you're a liberal, if you're a Democrat, if you're not a Christian, then you are not a citizen. And if you're not a citizen, you don't get equal protection of law and equal protection of rights. That 14th Amendment does not apply to you. It's exactly how he twisted it. See, because when it comes down to it, Secretary of Education Ryan Walters is a coward. He's a total coward. He can't accept, much less understand, a differing point of view, a different perspective. He can't see it and doesn't want to. As a matter of fact, can't see it, doesn't want to see it, and wants to make sure no one else can. He wants to make sure to stop you from being able to make sure anyone else can see it, even though it's a constitutional right. I mean, what is wokeness? What is it? And even if it is some liberal hippie BS, is that illegal? Is that against the law? No, it isn't. You have every right to free speech, and any court would tell you this. Any court would tell Secretary of Education Ryan Walters this, but our education secretary doesn't seem to be too educated, if you ask me. Well, maybe he is. Maybe it's the fact that he's just a coward. That's the biggest problem. And can't accept anybody else's point of view. No, I can't look at that because that makes me too anxious. You woke, and it makes me anxious. And that's Secretary of Education Ryan Walters. While he's doing all this corrupt stuff. While he's displacing millions of dollars meant for public education, so private education parents can spend it on grills, so that they can spend it on guns and ammo, so that they can stop funding pre-K education programs because of the wokeness of Tulsa Public Schools, when these GEER funds aren't even going nowhere near that. And then he pulls up stuff from 2 years ago that's already been removed, saying, look at all the porn over here. And people buy it up. But and that's the lapse of ethics. That is Ryan Walters, see? Because also when it comes to corruption and ethics, he's doing other things too. He's got these official accounts on Twitter and Facebook, official accounts for the office. And when it comes to ethics laws in Oklahoma, you are not supposed to politic through them. Well, guess what Ryan Walters does? He politics through them. Because he really doesn't believe in the rule of law. Not for him, for everybody else, for all those woke people. They got to follow the law that we write. But since we wrote it and we're the conservatives, we shouldn't have to follow it. And that's just cowardly. It's, I want to be able to dish it, but there's no way I'm going to be able to take it. And that's what that is. And that's Ryan Walters in a nutshell. Right there. And that's why he's coming out with all these janky, shaky videos about people being woke. And how it's upsetting. And you gotta vote for me because of all the wokeness. I'll make sure that that kid's gonna be a Christian. I know his family are Islamic and they came from Afghanistan, but if they're gonna go to our schools, they're gonna do Christian prayer. That's exactly how Secretary of Education Ryan Walters feels about it. He's so unqualified for the job he has. He's so corrupt and inept. When you look at the comparison of who's running against him, with all the qualifications she has, all of the character and outstanding experience, that's who he's got to go against. And you can see why he does those janky, shaky, angst-out videos about wokeness and getting rid of the liberal left and their First Amendment rights in videos. This is Across the Desk with Kit Fairchild, and we'll see you next week.